When you really think about it, you know, the Racine area is known for several different companies, Johnson Wax, Twin Disc, but you hear very little about Styberg.
We're all familiar with Corvettes and school buses, fire trucks, but you don't have to be well known to feel a sense of pride.
The story of Ernest C. Styberg and the engineering company he founded in 1927 is one of skill, perseverance, and an imagination to make good.
If everybody else said it can't be done, he'd find a way to do it.
In the fulfillment of his own dreams and pursuits as a tool and die maker, his business would go on to fabricate parts and components that touch every facet of modern life.
The electric switch used for this hair curler.
From fountain pens to jet aircraft, the range of customers Styberg lent his mastery and design towards is a head-turning who's who of name-brand builders.
Schwinn bicycles were some of the best bicycles made in the country.
The company's story also includes Ernest's wife Elora, who would serve by his side as vice president through thick and thin, and their son Ernest Jr., who after taking over in the late 60s would well bring the family company into the 21st century.
We take the jobs that nobody else wants to mess around with.
And no company story is complete.
You know, you come to us, we'll figure it out.
Without the dedicated employees who define its true greatness.
Bring on those jobs, we'll take them on.
This is the story of Styberg Engineering.
Welcome, this is Styberg Engineering, Racine, Wisconsin. This past year we celebrated our 90th year in business.
Based in Racine, Wisconsin, a contract manufacturer like Styberg Engineering plays a key role in the making of everyday things. For example, to make this fire truck, the truck builder will likely outsource the fabrication of various parts and components needed to make the finished product. And likewise, if some of those components are highly complex, like this heavy-duty transmission made by Allison, even the transmission maker can outsource the production of parts.
Well, the one thing about Styberg Engineering is that we have what we call one-stop shop. As you can see here, we have a number of brochures here of over the time of the company, and this is one of our earlier brochures from the 50s. This brochure is a little bit newer than the previous one. It describes how the company is laid out. It actually shows pictures of each of the departments and kind of the product lines that come out of each one of the departments. But you can see here with this brochure, we also added laser cutting, laser welding, laser etching. A lot of customers want us to etch small part numbers on the teeth of parts for counterfeiting purposes.
It takes a problem-solving mind to imagine and design a part that a customer needs.
Just recently, we had one customer that called up and said, "Do you know how to hook up a transmission to an engine?" That's all we received.
It also takes an engineering mind to build the physical tools and dies that machinists use to stamp, shape, and refine metal into a finished part. And history should well note that Ernest C. Styberg was one of the best tool and die makers around.
When a person like Ernest Styberg came to Racine, America was a wonder compared to Europe.
By the time Ernest Styberg came to the United States from Sweden around the turn of the 20th century, Racine, Wisconsin was like a modern-day Silicon Valley.
It was like a community of innovators. And people with ideas would read the magazines and the articles about new inventions and that, and they realized that Racine was a hotbed for new inventions. So if you had an idea and a patent, you want to go where they really care about it.
In such a hotbed of innovation, opportunities abounded, and a self-starter like Ernest was in his element. He learned English at the YMCA and took a mechanical drawing class.
One of the unique things about Racine is this is where the vocational system started in the United States in 1911.
And while moving about in this manufacturing mecca, one of Styberg's guiding principles was to learn as much as he could about tool rooms and machine shops on one job before moving on to the next opportunity.
Working in places like the Mitchell Motor Car Company in the tool room, he worked at the J.I. Case Plowers. He worked at Hamilton Beach. Hamilton Beach had one of the best tool and die shops in the city. So here's a man that has gotten an amazing amount of information about all these factories.
It was during this period that Alora Swenson entered Ernest's life, and while the dream of starting his own business filled his thoughts early on, Ernest toyed around with making different craft items at home, like this miniature bedroom set made from discarded cigar boxes. But it wouldn't be until 1927, at the age of 37, that Ernest finally turned his dreams into reality. He founded Styberg Engineering in his garage on Winslow Street, and the first product to come out of his shop was a decorative serving utensil made of brass and silver.
This is the little cake server that my father-in-law did when he was still in his garage then. He was able to do this as his first little product.
It attached to and worked in tandem with a cake knife and was ready for market just in time for the holiday season.
Yeah, you cut your wedge of cake, and then you slide it under the cake, and then you go like this and you pull the whole thing out. It hangs on to the wedge of cake that you've cut. He was so brilliant with his thinking that he had to put all these ideas into working order.
Soon after, a local company, Walker Manufacturing, placed an order with Styberg, and he quickly hired some crew and added more equipment. More orders came in, and within a year, Ernest was making plans to build a factory on the corner of DeKoven and Kearney Avenues.
You had different tool and die makers. I mean, you had people that would fix them, and then you would have actually people who created them. Now, Ernest Styberg was the type of person that would create it. When they needed a new machine, they would create that machine to make that product. Now, most shops wouldn't do that. If everybody else said it can't be done, he'd find a way to do it.
By the time the factory was finished in the summer of 1929, Ernest's wife Alora, who managed the front office, gave birth to their one and only child, Ernest Jr., on October 22nd of that same year. And with all that, life in America was looking pretty good.
Here he just had a child born, the market crashed.
Styberg's recovery was slow, but like many other factories in the area, it got a much-needed boost when it joined the World War II effort.
Styberg Engineering actually had parts on the first P-51 Mustang that was very heavily used in World War II.
By the time Styberg Engineering celebrated its 25th year in business, it counted a long list of world-class customers as proud achievements. Johnson's Wax, Schwinn Bicycle, Harley-Davidson, Hamilton Beach, J.I. Case, Posters. These were but a few of Styberg's well-known customers.
If there was a problem, he didn't give up. By sticking to it, he had found a way, and that's how he was.
By the early 50s, Styberg Engineering had moved into its current location on Layard Avenue, where, during the summers of his youth, Ernest Jr. spent a lot of time in the drafting room learning tool design. And after graduating from Park High School, he tellingly pursued a degree in business administration from Northwestern University.
This is a picture that my husband showed me when he and his two friends took a trip and they went out west.
It was also during this time that he met Bernice Dombrowski, another Park High alum who'd captured his fancy.
Ernie said to me, "Why don't you come and work for us? And then we can see each other, we date, da-da-da-da-da." So I think I had only been at the case company for about a month. So I told them that I would be leaving. Nobody looked at me as I walked out the office. We had built a little house on Lombard, and guess who our neighbor was? The man that hired me from Case.
Ernest and Bernice married in 1951, and after Ernest served in the Army at Fort Ord during the Korean War, he focused on making Styberg engineering his life's work.
He could have been an artist, a doctor, but it was fortunate. They communicated with each other beautifully.
Now, with Ernest Sr. serving as president, Alora serving as vice president, and Ernest Jr. overseeing operations, the company was indeed a family affair. By the early 1970s, Ernest Jr. was leading the company he'd inherited, and a new generation of employees would barely get a glimpse of the legendary founders.
I saw him once. That was it.
Some members of this new generation would go on to serve with the company for many decades, such as John Baker. He's been with the company for more than 45 years.
Well, in the 70s, graduating from high school, a lot of people really did not know what they were going to do.
John's story is similar to other company veterans, but as chance would have it, they found themselves not only in a place with great potential for personal growth, they also found themselves serving under a great man.
Ernie, we called him Ernie. Never heard him swear, never heard him raise his voice. Yeah, there was companies that paid more, but you were just a number, and when things got bad, your number come up, you were out the door. He wasn't like that.
You got that sense of you belong to something here. You know, I'd do extra for him, and I felt like he would do extra for me. It was an honor to work for him all these years.
You know, even things weren't always going where we were hoping to go. He always had that calming effect, and he always had that follow your advice.
Mr. Steinberg would catch me with my hand in my pockets, and I had to consciously think whenever I was coming across him, get my hands out of my pockets. Every time, are your hands cold?
I remember when Congressman Les Aspin came in, and that was another one of the Styberg gatherings where they had Kringle, and he had a 4-star general with him. It was right after the Gulf War. We made parts for the Abrams tank for the transmission, and that general was marching up and down saying, "How many of you feel like heroes?" He said, "Not one of those tanks failed in the field during that Gulf War, and you ought to be proud." It gave me, I think the rest of the employees, kind of a sense of, wow, we really accomplished something, you know?
In fulfilling his parents' legacy, Ernest Jr. was steadfast in running a company that promoted from within and didn't shy away from taking on highly customized jobs.
Everybody else wants to take the easy jobs, the ones where here's the blueprint, make the dice, stamp it out, stack it on a skid, send it out the door. We take the jobs that nobody else wants to mess around with.
Part of Styberg's legacy is taking the risk and investing the money and equipment to develop new jobs.
In the late 80s, Ernest Jr. took the biggest gamble of his professional life by pursuing the means to manufacture this technically challenging part used in heavy-duty transmissions. At first, a third-party machine specifically designed to form the part's complicated shape needed to be sourced in from Europe. And then, to further refine the part for the final marketplace, Styberg's own engineers had to build a completely unique machine from the ground up.
But for a while, I remember Mr. Styberg saying he was putting $75 in each box to pay for the R&D on that part, just making the part right.
It took years before the company would turn a profit from its efforts. But the bet paid off and helped propel the company into the 21st century. Known for their philanthropy, the Stybergs have donated millions to local organizations. And before Ernie's passing in 2018, he would witness the company's 90th year anniversary and the formation of an employee stock ownership plan.
There's a lot of different opportunities at this place.
You have ownership in the company, and it's for your own personal benefit.
Showing up for work every day and having a genuine interest in what you're doing.
My dear husband said, this is where I want it to be continued as long as it can, and it will. There are opportunities now at Styberg's that are offering scholarships. So I would say, come, start while you're young.